people around them, they're either younger or they do have something else going for them, and it's like, well, I want that edge. How can I do that? And it was like, well, at your level, every little thing matters. So could we leave this go? You know, and it was like, could we just take that out? I was like, and never, ever, ever do I ever want to see you drink a soda. I never want to see it. I never want to hear about it. It's not okay.
Welcome to the Generation Strong Talk Show. I'm Jessie Akerster, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Sonja Pettersen. So a little bit of background about Sonja. Very briefly, Sonja is a naturopathic medical doctor who works with professional athletes to optimize their health and for the extreme demands of their careers. I'd like you to tell me a little bit about how you got into medicine and then how you got into treating athletes.
Okay. I don't know if I remember that far back. It's been a while. Originally, this kind of medicine I got into because it's how I was raised. I didn't even see a regular doctor until I was 6 or 7, and in order to travel, you needed vaccinations. That's the first time I saw a regular person. So anyways, that was sort of just my motivation, and never having drugs or anything in the house when I was little. And I thought, well, there's so much more of this that we need to give to everybody. It's the old medicine, and it's time to bring it back. So that's what got me into it. And then sometime during my education, I got involved with this pain clinic, and it was like, oh, isn't that amazing that we can take this modality and really fix people so fast. And originally, even before going to medical school, I was actually a personal trainer, and what I really wanted to do was work in professional hockey in Canadian. That's a big deal there. And I asked everybody at the time, it's like, how do I get in? How do I get through this, break this glass ceiling for women? And they said it's impossible. And they're like, pick anything else, but as a woman, you're not going to make it anywhere. And this was a long time ago. There were no women anywhere in professional sports, no journalists, nothing. Nobody was allowed into the locker rooms. It was just male dominated everywhere. So I believed them, and I was like, I'm never going to make it as a woman doing this type of work, so I might as well be a doctor then, if that's my only thing. So I went ahead and I went to medical school, and then it was after that I started teaching this modality, and then that's how I met Charles Poliquin, and he had a facility for athletes, and I was only going to ever go to his facility to train somebody how to do this, because athletes can benefit just like all the workman's comp cases, all the motor vehicle accident patients that we were already working with. It was like, it's sort of the same thing, but for them, it's like even faster. How do I get them back into the game faster? So I thought, that's ideal, you know, this will be so cool. I'll go and see his facility, I'll train somebody that works for him, and then they'll have this as a tool for their athletes. And as it turned out, I went there and I just worked all day long, and nobody ever came to learn it. And I was like, oh, I've got to go home, you know, so what's happening? They're like, yeah, we're just going to keep flying you out. And I was like, that's so strange to fly somewhere to work. And now I take a plane to work every day. However, yeah, I just then moved to Phoenix and started working there. And that was really my introduction to professional sports of many kinds. Certainly in America, the baseball was having some issues. Thank you, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, but we were no longer allowed to work with them outside of their league, so they got fined heavily for seeking treatment outside. But aside from that, we had all the other sports, and I got into doing that, and I don't even know, like, it definitely picked me. Like, in the end of the day, I didn't put any effort into finding this. It just found me, but it was wanting to work with athletes from the very beginning, just because the dedication, the commitment it takes to have a body that can do that for work. I'm so impressed by that. It's like, I work hard to do what I do, and I love going to work with people who work so hard to do what they do. it just feeds itself, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a feed forward system, and I get so much reward out of working with motivated people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I am today. And now, unfortunately, I don't have time anymore to work with other people. Like, it's a rare occasion that I will get just someone who doesn't compete, and now I actually enjoy that part. But really, it's the athletes take so much of my time, and the lifestyle is so unique that there just isn't time for anybody else in there. It's just work.
I think you probably also find with like professional athletes that especially during the time of their career, the demand for someone like yourself that understands what they do, what their needs are. There would only be a handful of people with your skill set.
So yes, it's, you know, what's funny that you say that without even living in the US and all that stuff, and you would think, even if you didn't know, there's tremendous money in professional sport in the US, and yet they don't have people like me on their teams that are paid by the teams. And it was like, it's so crazy to me. And I've been in this world for so many years now, and I still find it crazy. There's no lack of money, but there's such poor education as to those unique needs. And it just seems like common sense that, and you're saying it now, like, it's like, of course, you know, but it's like, there's no of course over there. It's confounds me, like, every day where I have a patient who's been mismanaged by their team, and it was like, what else do you do, like, in a day? Who else are you seeing where it's like, oh, you know, with athletes, do I do it this way or that way? They only do that every day.
Exactly.
Yes. And so, again, mostly males, really all males is what I work with, so there's a lot fewer issues, you know, and at the end of the day, I still have a small portion that are regular people. And it was like, well, how is it that I would know this about being an athlete, and yet your own team physicians don't know that? And I still have to go home and figure out why this woman, I don't know, pees her pants with every period or whatever. It's like, it's such a different mind shift and a different part of my brain with all that information. It's like, but I need to know all of that. It's like, how is it that you don't know your own population when that's all you do? It's very strange to me. So, and that's what I think gets me going every day. It was like, there's these people sacrifice so much of their bodies. You know, we had this conversation last week with a couple of my guys. It was like, at the end of the day, it's not weird for you to say, oh, after my shift today, I might need surgery. Like, who else goes to work and go, after today's day at work, I might need surgery? Yes. Nobody else says that. And yet they put their lives on the line. It's a very, mostly football now, like really only football now. And it's a very violent game. And so it's like, that's not weird that these guys have surgery. Perhaps more than one a year. That's not odd. So they have these unique demands on their bodies, and so there's a unique set of problems that happen, and there's a great set of tools out there to help them. And yet, why is this not in every sport, in every locker room? Why don't they have these simple tools available to them?
Maybe this is where we need to create a education process.
Yes.
And if you're someone that's leaving in that field, maybe that's your place to do that in the future.
Yes. It's the good old boys club right now. So, and it's hard to, for me to think about it. It's been so many times I've been told, it's like, it's not going to happen for you because you're a woman. Like, for no other reason. Yeah, so I have sort of given up on that. It's only because concussions are a specialty of mine that I feel like someday, with this joint task force that we have between our military and the NFL, the National Football League, that somehow I will leave my mark in that arena, at least for the traumatic brain injuries, if nothing else. But yeah, I haven't even considered that anymore, just as I was like, okay, there's so much work to be done with the athletes themselves, like to change the paradigm of allowing good medicine, or I don't even know what. I don't even know what the word is anymore, because it's really so crazy that it isn't just common sense anymore.
It confounds me that someone that clearly they see the value in you because you're working with all of these athletes, why you would not then invest in educating the other doctors so that then you have a whole task force that can support rather than having one person with that knowledge. That's crazy. But maybe it will be your place to start that change. And there's the people that say that women aren't the ones that are going to lead the change are scared. So
yeah, maybe I don't even know anymore. I just like, for me it's one day at a time. And this past football season I had for me a straightforward injury, but for them something very complicated, and I fixed them so fast. It was like a 12-hour time where we really, a lot of that 12 hours I was hands-on with them. They lost their job because I made such a change in them that they got fired, because the ignorance in their world is that there's no way you could have done that without a steroid. And it was like, that's not even how they work. You know, it's like if in times of trauma, that's not even where you pull a steroid out. And it was like, it was so sad for me. And I was like, you lost your job over that. And it was like, because they can't just test them. That comes from higher up. So it's like, it's not like, anyway, it was a political situation, but it just broke my heart. And I was like, okay, we worked so hard to get him game ready, you know, so that he'd be ready to play, because he genuinely wanted to play. And they got scared and they're like, I don't know what you're doing, but that's not possible in my world. So you did something illegal. I was like, there's no steroids, like, but just think for just a minute, you know? And it's the ignorance everywhere. Most of my therapies are IV therapies. And again, it was like, they just have this assumption that you put a steroid in an IV. And I was like, do you know what it is? Do you know what steroids look like? How would you put that in an IV? Like, the ignorance is really unbelievable. So
can you tell me a little bit about how, like, your process would work? So you generally have an athlete comes to you that's injured.
Yes.
And then
that's usually how they find me. They're injured or they're at the end of their careers and they're trying to hold on. So then it's getting competitive for them. Sometimes I'll catch them trying to get into the league, and then they're just like, give me the edge so that I can get through combine, which is their way of competing against each other. And all the teams are there. So it's like a pageant, I call it, because the exercises are so ridiculous. If you knew what they had to do, you know, and every single player on the team does the same exercises. Again, where is the
specificity
thought?
And
it's not the same. They all play on a football team, but they don't have the same job. Those men on the line do a completely different job than the runners. You know, it's like, it's not the same. Why are they trying to just bench and sprint? And it's the same for every player, which to me is, again, it's like no one's trying to be thoughtful about this type of stuff. So, anyway, sometimes I get so lost in that I totally forget what you just said.
So I was asking about your process when an athlete comes to you.
Okay, so usually it is referral. I'm not trying to work any harder. My schedule is completely full, so I'm not looking for new patients. I'm not trying to pick up anything else, and I'm also trying to stay off the radar because there is, again, such ignorance in there. So they'll come and they'll say something hurts, and that's usually the introduction. Very rarely do I say I'm too tired for this or something like that. I love that because there's so much I can do with those things, but usually it's a body part and it's like it hurts, you know, somewhere, and then I address that, and then while they're sitting there it's like, and did you know, you know, and then they're like, oh, you've worked with so-and-so, like what do you put in their IV, like what is that, like what is an IV, and what, you know, is it legal? And they have a lot of fear too because they're not trying to do things that would make them lose their job. So that's usually how it starts, and then I will go through just a really quick orthopedic assessment, like just read imaging, treat that specific body part, and then, you know, just talk about, okay, where are we in the season? What are your goals? What are you trying to do? What is it like for you politically? don't tell me too much because I don't really understand. I don't really understand the politics so much, or actually the game itself. I never chose this. I really want to work in hockey. I understand hockey. Football is like, there's so many people out there. Yeah, I don't really get it. I know they're trying to move the ball in a certain direction, but that's pretty, I'm limited in that. And so that's it. I try and keep it focused on that. And I think that's really what they appreciate more than anybody. I think genuinely that's why I get so many patient referrals, is because I have no clue who they are. I'm not a fan of the game, so I don't watch it. So I don't, who they are to me isn't nearly as important as how bad their pain is.
Yeah.
And where they're trying to move through this.
Yeah, I think something that we discussed it earlier, before we put the camera on, you mentioned that after all of the time in medical school and those things, you sort of realised that the important part is the person in front of you.
Yeah.
And I know we've discussed that as coaches, that there's a point where you stop caring so much about like getting the perfect movement, and you start caring about am I helping this person be a better human? So I think from what you've described, it's the relationship that you build and that trust.
Yes.
That you, like, it's not about them being a famous person. It's
No.
about them being...
And it's not about perfection, ever. And I work with anything that they have to offer. And it doesn't matter to me. And so people from the outside will often say, well, what do you do for diet? What do you do for supplements? What do you do for movement? What do you do? And it was like, only what they give me. And I never, because there's something far more important. Like the bad boys from the diet have to go. Those are the things. But even if I can't get that in the beginning, if I can just get a crack in the door, to say, do you know, that what you eat actually affects what your tissues are made of. And a lot of my patients have grown up really poor, so they haven't had access to good food quality, if they've had a meal at all. And often their sport is their way, when they were young, to be fed. So it's like, I don't try to change anything like that immediately. I am not high on the pulpit saying, well, you got to do this and you got to do that. They already have a certain skill set that makes them the very best in the world. So in their sport, they are in the top 1,500 in the whole world. So they've already reached a level that's phenomenal. So I don't need to be preaching anything to them like that. So it's like, what have you got? What are you coming with? And it's like, did you know that drinking clean water or drinking so much water would take you this far? Whatever it is where I feel like I can have a conversation, and then it's like, make it interesting for them. And the more motivated they are, the more that they can hear, and then they're like, okay, when the season's over, can I come and spend time with you? It's like, okay, or today we could start with, and it's whatever they can do. And that's why it's never about like the perfect protocol for any of them, because it's really just, you say that you're here and you say that you're trying to get here. It was like, do you want to know the fastest way? And when you say things like faster, it appeals to them. So again, it's working with what they've already done. And I was like, do you know how hard it is to get where you've come from to where you are? That's the hard work. I'm going to tell you something easy. This is easy, and then we can just do this. I was like, can you just give me game day breakfast? I was like, I don't know what you do for the rest of the season or whatever, but could you let me decide what you eat on game day, And mostly that's a hard no. And I still work with that. And then you have to be sensitive to it again, because what they're trying to tell you is that I only feel good if I eat whatever, what my mama cooked for me when I was younger, what sits light in my stomach, and that part about their nerves and their nervous system, it's like that's what needs to be addressed into everybody. And that's what you're saying about style flexing. It's like adjust my nervous system first, and then I can hear you with everything else. And the modality I use most for pain is microcurrent. And when I put on those protocols, the first 2 protocols in every program, it doesn't matter what I'm treating, is always telling the nervous system it's okay. So I don't have to say that out loud. But and also when I'm talking to them, I don't say that out loud, but that's what you have to do first, because nothing else goes through. And I've been an educator in other different modalities for so long. I always say it's not the doctor that anybody wants to hear things from. Nobody wants to hear me do that. It's in fact where you get the most rejection in your protocols is when you're like wearing the white coat, telling them, and that's why it's the other people who don't have that medical degree that have superpowers to get through to people. And it was like, okay, so you're coming to me with money. Also, it's this thing about money, like they have good insurance and everything, so it's like, well, if I'm gonna pay you, then there's this expectation or whatever. So when you have like a strength coach or work in the beauty business as well, when you go and see your esthetician or whatever, it's like, here's my hard cash money, I'm going to give it to you. And when you say something, hey, you want your money to go further, they're like, yes. And they listen. And I was like, we could say the same thing about drinking water. It's not scary coming from you. It's scary when I say it. And I was like, oh, okay, she said if I don't drink water, my kidneys are going to fall out my back or something. Like they hear it different. Yeah. So I try not to be like a doctor, be like that kind of person. And at the end of the day, we still have to have scary conversations. So when I have support people around, it was like, hey, can you mention water for this one? It would be a good change. Or can you mention fish oils? I was like, for you, it would be, a big change for them. And it comes easier, where it's not so easy for me to say, take your fish oils, it's a game changer. Not just your game, but your life, It's like, so sometimes they're ready for it. And that depends on the level of pain or disability that they're coming in at. But if they're doing well, they just don't want to hear that I have to say fish oil is going to change your game. They're still not interested. Yeah. It's scary because they're thinking like I said that, because if they don't, something's going to fall off.
Well, it's something like coming from a coaching standpoint, I get a lot of people that come to me that are in a lot of pain, and they've been training and they've gone to physio and they've been trying different forms of rehab for years, and they still every time they go to the gym their back blows up or something, and it takes them getting to that point of like, I've been in pain for years before they're willing to go, okay, something needs to change. And I'm sure you find that the same thing, that there's a point where they're like, okay, I'll do what you asked me to do, because there's the sort of desperation at that point.
Yeah, it's usually other failed methods.
Yeah.
And I usually get them when their team has tried different things and then they can't get them any further. Or they've been hurt by too much anti-inflammatory or whatever it is that the team has provided with them, and they're like, okay, I can't do that anymore, my body's saying no to that. It's like, I hear there's something else, what is that? Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to touch on, you brought up nervous system state, and this is something that I've been playing a lot with and I'm doing a lot, trying to educate people on coaching, for them starting to understand their own state, understanding difference between being parasympathetic and sympathetic, and that I like the explanation that like in modern life now most people are constantly in a sympathetic state. And so I know as a coach, when I have people come in and I see them, they're like highly strung, obviously highly sympathetic, and then you put them to train and you're just adding more stress. And trying to explain to them that sometimes like we have to, as a coach, I find it's my place to start to educate them about like we need to bring balance into your life. And you're not going to get the training adaptations you need if we can't be in a parasympathetic state for some of our days. And so you mentioned nervous system state, when you're in treatment. So is it that you're trying to get them into a parasympathetic state for them to get an effective response?
And there's tricks to do that. Like you can physically come in, and there's if you touch where those nervous system ganglia are, you can change them really quickly. So if you have that opportunity, I try and create that opportunity if I feel like someone's really resisting me. Or the other thing is just to say something that's so far removed from it that they don't even notice that that's how you've come in, like to that, like where it's not like voodoo or whatever it is that they're thinking. Or if they've given me a body part already and they've trusted me with something, is to move it in a way that I'm already changing their brain waves. So if you can lie them down, that's not always possible or practical, or they're not trusted you yet to lie down in front of you. So that's not always how I start, but there's always a way into the nervous system. So, and the conversation could be like completely off topic to get them in, or if they've already stated like their why they're not going to do it. If they come at you with that already, well, I can't because, and it was just like, oh yeah, and then you say something either absurd and ridiculous where they have to laugh and they break down there because it's the unexpected, so they have to break down that way. Again, you've shifted their nervous system. Or they've said something negative about their pain, their political situation, their team or whatever, and then you just say something like or, and then you give them a place to go in their brains because they just haven't had a way to get out of that thinking. And they're like, oh, we're not dealing with just the normal hair or whatever like that. And then they get a chance to have space. So instead of putting them in the corner, and again, it's like, it's this way or no way. Oh, you're never going to get this unless you relax right now. I said, relax. You know, you're never going to get them that way. So you either break the peace with something in common, which I have nothing with these people, and nothing in common. It was just really, in fact, when people tell me or ask me sometimes what my specialty is, I might say large animal veterinary practice, because then they realize that I'm not dealing with what you're dealing with. I'm dealing with something really different. And if you can see my people that way, it was like you will know that it takes a different set of tools in order to do it. Sometimes I say pediatrics because it's a lot of work. These boys are a lot of work in that way. But again, when you say pediatrics, it's again from another practitioner of any kind. You go, oh, a different tool set. Like she's not kidding about them being different. It was like, come at them different. Like a pediatrician definitely doesn't walk up to the patient the same way you would to an adult patient. And again, that's the nervous system. Like work with the child's nervous system. Do that first, and whether it's physically or mentally you've done it, it was like, first breach that. First change them. And if you can't do anything else, you take enormous breaths yourself, and soon they'll be copying you, Or if you feel like you can't do that either, take the short breaths that they're doing, and then they'll be like, oh, she gets me. Like she's panting like I am. And again, you've just changed, like, let me get in. Okay, now you can hear me. Because before they couldn't hear you because they were still, oh, I'm running away. This is my flight thing,
Yeah, I'm running from the bear.
Yes. I'm not going to fight you. I thought about it, but I'm not going to fight you, so I'm going to run, And it's that we have to like put the weapons down. It's like, and here, let's have like an open discussion.
This is, I think I posted about it last week about you need to be in a safe space before you can make any change. And I think that's the nervous system is that way around it, but it's as long as the person feels safe, then you're going to be able to get them in. I have patients all over the world, and one of them did not speak English as a first language, was saying to me one day, he's like, I really like how you're so unprofessional. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. And I was just like, wait a minute. I was like, I think that was a compliment. So let me just like, okay, listen to what he's trying to say behind that. And it was like, okay, I get it.
I was like, all right, I'll take that. I was like, again, it doesn't matter as long as it's like effective, you know, at the end of the day. And they make the changes that they want. And eventually they don't need me.
Yeah.
Like that's what really our medicine is about, is taking the true Latin definition of docere, like doctor, and being the teacher. And letting them learn skills for life, for them, for their families, so that they don't need me.
You mentioned earlier, you said bad boys in nutrition. So
Yeah.
when you say that, what are you referring to?
Yeah, so my guys are really into their vehicles, and everybody understands maintenance on a vehicle. So I'll often ask them, I was like, have you ever put sand in your gas tank? And they're so confused. And it was like, well, I was like, I see you as a Formula One. And then they pop up. And I was like, okay, so if you had a Formula One car, I was like, would you put sand in its gas tank? And they know immediately that you wouldn't do that. And I said, I'm saying you're the Formula One. That's how hard you've worked to get to where you are with your body. I'm your pit crew. I'm telling you to pull over. I was like, you can't do another lap until you pull over. I was like, those cars would never make it if they didn't change tires and all that kind of stuff, and they get it immediately. It's like, you can't get another lap without gas. So only gas goes in the tank, not sand goes in the tank. Sand will wreck that Formula One car. I was like, what's the sand here? I was like, that cheeseburger, whatever it is. Usually I won't say anything until they're there in front of me eating something nasty. That is not gonna go. I was like, would you like to bend? I was like, in the martial arts that I studied, we always said, like, the tree that doesn't bend in the wind breaks. I was like, would you like to break under your next trauma, or would you like to bend? I was like, and those foods with those fats, with that kind of sweetener and everything, that's where you're going if you keep doing that.
So if you could say to someone, if you could be direct, say, these things I never want you to eat again, what would those things be?
So absolutely, it's trans fats and it's high fructose corn syrup. And those are my absolutes. And those two are non-negotiable. I really try with the dyes as well. My guys are really blessed in so many ways, like genetically, most of them, not all of them. Some of them have just got real grit, you know, from growing up in not the nicest parts of town, and that's how they've made it to the league. But those are my non-negotiables. And when they realize I'm not asking for a lot, but if it isn't food, it doesn't go in there. And so everything else, it's like, when it's food, I'm gonna be okay with it. However, I would prefer, you know, if we didn't eat the wheat and the dairy and certainly a lot of sugars. I was like, you'll be better if. And when they realize how much they get out of it, and often I'm not even as specific, because most of my guys have a very acidic type of lifestyle. So if I just say more vegetables, it actually gets me further than saying a lot of other stuff that they may not understand. Also, a vegetable is not corn or anything like that they may have thought a French fry. That's not what I mean by vegetable, so it has to be green. You know, and then that way we stick to things, and when they fill themselves up that way, then I'm getting one of the greatest balancers I can, because their exercise is over acid, their meats are over acid, the music they listen to is over acid, the political environment they work in is over acid. So that is one of the greatest things I can do to change my population. So it's different when it's outside of football, but for those guys, it's usually just, can I get this into you? And if I can't, I want to do it in a powder. I was like, well, I'm giving you this option. It's just like kids when you're trying to put them to bed. Do you want to take the slow route or the long route to bed? It doesn't matter. They know that the outcome is they're going to bed. So it's like, would you like to eat it? I was like, or would you like to take this powder every day, maybe twice? You know, it's like, it's not, this is a non-negotiable for me, is to balance what you already have.
Yeah.
And then when you get just in a little bit, they will come to you and they will notice people around them. They're either younger or they do have something else going for them. And it's like, well, I want that edge. How can I do that? And it was like, well, at your level, every little thing matters. So could we leave this go? You know, and it was like, could we just take that out? I was like, I never, ever, ever do I ever want to see you drink a soda. I never want to see it. I never want to hear about it. It's not okay. It's not for what you do.
Mm.
I was like, you don't have to play. I was like, would you like to quit now? I was like, then you can go and have a soda. You know, it's like, but who's paying for everything right now? Everything. Like, who is paying for this treatment, for this house, for this car? It was like, you get paid to be an athlete, so could we act like one? And then they want to step into it.
Mm.
And it's a very cultural thing. It's like they are, we just so crazy for our sports that we have musicians and actors and all the famous people want to connect with these players.
Mm.
And it was like, they can live that way because they don't demand their bodies to do X, Y, Z in a day. I was like, you can't do that. I go, but if you do really well in your career, even when you retire, you'll be able to hang out with them if that's your goal. I was like, but you can still hang out with them and act like an athlete.
Mm.
And so for me, sleep is a big thing as well. So that's, again, it was like, I'm not going to pick on your food too much because I really want to make some really critical things. I want those to change, the trans fats and the high fructose corn syrup. And then after that, it was like, how about sleep? And then I might go back to diet or supplementation once instill in them the importance of living the life of an athlete. It was like, okay, well, if you don't care about your competition, then go ahead, make your own choices or whatever. And then they get competitive. Everything's a competition. Everything that we talk about, every treatment that I do, everything with these boys turns into a competition. And it was like, well, I might as well use what I have, you know? And it was like, so that's how we bring it up. It was like, well, so-and-so doesn't eat that anymore. So-and-so has a chef. And that's what I say a lot to these guys, because again, we have money in this situation. It was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the food. Get a chef.
Yeah.
Then it's not your worry.
Mm.
It's like now all your job is just to eat.
Mm.
It's not to think about it. It's not to cook. It was like, all you have to do is get a chef. Look, simple. Check that one. It was like, now we can focus on something else. And then we don't have to have those conversations where you're really coming up against everything that's in them. If they had it when they were a kid, and it's kind of like that for everybody, but if their mama gave it to them, it must be healthy for you.
Mm.
Must be good for you. It's not saying healthy. It must be good for you, you know? And so that's their comfort food.
Mm.
And so that's what they want to go back to. So you are really coming up, you're really trying to do something as profound as changing their religion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are their sacred cows. These are the things that you really don't want to get involved in, but you have to. So that's why it's like, all right, it's not me, it's a third party. It's the chef. You know, let's just leave it to them. Or it's like, you don't have to like it. We have arguments about water a lot. It was like, I didn't say you had to like your water. I didn't say that. I never said that. I just said you have to drink it. I was like, I'm not saying that it tastes good. I didn't say that. I'm just saying, if you want to play and you want the edge, you're going to drink that.
Yeah.
That's what your body needs. So.
It's funny because all of the things you're talking about, it's the same conversations you have with every person. Being, as an elite athlete, I've had this conversation with a lot of my athlete friends that we understand that we have to, like, if we want to be the best, those are the sacrifices we have to make. But it's the same conversations we have with your just average mums, that you're not sleeping enough. You need to eat greens in all of your meals, and you need to drink water. Like, those are very simple things. Like, stop eating all the processed shit. Those are actionable for anybody and will impact health and longevity. And it's funny to me that we have that same conversation with, like, your mum who's just come into the gym at like 45, or you're having the same conversation with your professional athletes.
It's their things that are so dear to them. And because of that, there's that dopamine aspect of eating food where it's really like, oh, it's gone beyond taste and flavor, and it's just really they're feeding that dopamine fix, and it's like you could just rub it on you know, like you just like this is what they're not even tasting it anymore. It's just the whole experience of it. And I was like, oh, I have that, you know, that's your reward, have that. I'm not even going to take that away from you. After that, however, that's when you do that right before leg day. And then I was like, oh, leg day hurts when you do that right before. So if you time it right, you know, or do that right before a game or something, it was like, you're going to know, you know, it's like that reward thing. I didn't say no. I just said, we're going to put it at this time. And you're still going to have it. Right, because they'll know when it doesn't make them feel good.
Yeah.
And I'm always surprised at some of the things that they are prepared to give up. And alcohol is one of those things. And I was like, what's interesting, even amongst the younger ones, how they notice that they don't feel well after that. Okay, so when you take away all the bad boy foods and then you allow them, it was like, that's like alcohol. They feel as sticky and as sore in their tendons as if they had had something to drink. And then they're like, that didn't make me feel so good, you know, and then they'll get, okay, all right, I can, you know, make different choices.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm not saying no, I'm saying I'm going to have that at the end of the season. And that's so impressive to me when I can see them give something up. I'm not having that to the end of the season. And I'm like, could I do that? I don't think I could do that in my life. So again, I love this population because they can all of a sudden do something that's so incredibly hard, you know, that other people are just, I can't give it up.
Yeah.
But that's why it's never saying no. It's like really never, it's just making changes. And it's actually something I've learned from Alzheimer's patients, and I don't even work with this group anymore, but it's fascinating to me with all this neurological, because I am interested in the brain injuries and all the neurological deficits that happen to us now as our culture, our society changes, and we have so much more Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all those things. You can't argue with somebody who has Alzheimer's. It's very frustrating and it really upsets them, and their lives are already hard enough. So it's always a yes. Yes, exactly. Isn't that interesting that the monkeys come around at this time of year? Instead of going, there's no monkeys, what are you saying, or whatever. It was like, or arguing about taking your medication, or whatever it is with them. It was like, no, I've already taken it. You're like, yes, you did take it. And we're going to take it again right now. Instead of going, no, you didn't. You have to take it. The doctor said it's time. It's like you never argue. You never put yourself in that situation. And so I do it now the same with these guys. And it's just really worked so well. It's like, absolutely have that. Have that hamburger. Have that all. Have it whatever you want to have. Have your soda. And and then it's like you get this way to make these changes, which they never would otherwise, because nobody wants a fight. It's already, and they really feel like you don't get it. Especially for me, being female, not being an athlete, not having any of those things. They're just thinking that I don't get what it's like for them. But if you always say yes, then they go, oh no, she does understand. She's been around us long enough now that she does understand. So I can listen. What's that now? You know, it's like, so, and that again, that's another way to get around the nervous system, but it's really just a great way to make changes that are so important for people, especially at a time where it's really, really, really important.
Yeah. I want to change track it slightly. You're generally working with men now, but I'm assuming that you've worked with female athletes in the past. I'd like to know about adaptations of nutrition during the hormonal cycle. I've had a number of female athletes asking that was something they'd like to hear you talk about.
Okay. Yeah, so it's different. actually before I wanted to go to medical school, I thought I was just going to go into research. And in research, sometimes you just want to push it through, say your agenda, and you want a certain outcome, and not to manipulate the data, but you're hoping for something. So when you're going around looking for your subjects, you don't want the women. You know, and it's hard when you're working at university to like sometimes get enough subjects for your experiment, but you're like, oh, woman. And even as a woman, it was just like, oh, it was like, then you have to ask them questions about their periods, and it doesn't really matter what as long as they're like human physiology experiments, you have to take that into consideration. So, yes, it's, you have to make changes and make allowances for being a woman. And I always feel like it's like, say the good first. Like, isn't it so amazing that we get to be women? Like, we really, that line from Big Fat Greek Wedding or whatever, it was just like, yes, the men are the household, but the women are the neck, you know? It's like, we really have a lot of power, you know? And it was like, isn't it amazing we get to be women? And with being women, we have to make changes. So when we compare things with training schedules or eating or sleeping or anything like that, we have to take into consideration like the gifts that we have for being a woman and work with them. And so it doesn't mean doing what our male counterparts are doing. Please don't. You know, it's like, that's your gift of being a woman, is to have this. And guess what happens when you are a woman? It was like, you get these other benefits that maybe they don't sound so sexy compared to how much you bench, you know, how much you're squatting these days. Maybe that's not it, but could you, you know, allow for that, you know, to be like the greatest part of who you are. And also, you bench and squat and do all these other things that are really miraculous. Now, if you want to do that with integrity of your tissues, I was like, these are the changes that we're going to make. So we don't do ketosis the same way that a man does it. We don't put ourselves under that stuff, and we certainly don't do things without listening to our bodies. That's really a male thing. That's really a woman trying to compete in a man's world. It was like, to not listen. Our listening is far more powerful. It's just the way that we were created as humans. Someone had to listen to what's out there, and that's our role. It was like, we haven't changed. Our DNA hasn't changed to make us so different from where our ancestors were. And it was like, this is our job, to pay attention to cycles of life, you know, so that we know when to plant, when to harvest, when to have children, what to do with them, how to raise them without books. Like, that's all from our listening, you know, from what's available out there, all the information of all the women that have come before us. And I actually started, right out of medical school, I started in obstetrics. And so for me, one of the mind benders was how women got pregnant. Like, we learned about these cycles that were 28 days and what happens on day 1, 7, 21. You know, it's like, what now? Like, that's so not the stories that these women are telling us when they talk about when they conceived. I was like, okay, well, that wasn't in the textbook, so how did you get pregnant on that day? You know, and it was like, okay, it's like, and at first I was like, they're telling it wrong. They've made a mistake. And then once you've done it for long enough, it's like, they're telling it right. We're really that powerful as women that we can do things that's not in the textbooks. So work with that. It's like, we really are amazing at everything we can do, and we certainly can compete well in mind over matter. In fact, we're much stronger in men, and the military is figuring that out. So under duress, we do much better. It was like, put us in those positions. It's like, so we can be good competitors, and we can be good at our sports, but work with being a woman, you know, instead of working against being a woman, and change according to your cycles, change your eating habits, and listen. Your body's saying it right. And if it's saying, okay, I need like a Snickers bar, I don't even know what it is over here, but I need a chocolate bar or whatever, listen to that. What is it saying? chances are it's saying I need more magnesium, but understand that it's calling for something. Instead of saying I'm weak and I have no discipline, and it's like that's for other people, and you know, guys don't have that, and no, it's like, embrace that. It was like, my body wants something. It was just like, what is it? And feed that.
Yeah.
And certainly a woman can do so much with feeding her soul, whatever that means to you. By having a tribe and by having a collective, we really can do so much more than a man could do. So never think that it's like we're limited because we're women, but work with being a woman. It was like our capacity is greater if you just allow it to be that way. But we do need certain things, and in this day and age, I know it's like we have these rings, watches, everything that monitors everything from us, and we get caught up in data, and it's like it's supposed to, and it was like, supposed to for who? It was like, what are you comparing yourself to now? And how do you feel? And it was like, you could use some of those markers, could just give yourself a picture, and then just go, work with that. I heard someone say the other day, a female, like, oh, my temperature went up 0.2 degrees these last couple of days. I have to change this, or I have to change that. And I was like, what now? Like, as in scolding themselves, and I'm like, what? I was like, why don't you look back and congratulate yourself? That's a phenomenal marker. Like, you got your body temperature up. It's like, do you know how hard I have to work as a physician sometimes with women to do that? I was like, that's excellent. Look back and congratulate. You did well. Not have to make changes because I did something wrong. I was like, this is great if you're going to chase numbers. But again, I'm not about that. I'm just really not about the chasing numbers. And I understand that when you are coming close to competition time and you do have parameters, those numbers become important for a different reason. And then you always have to remember why you're doing it.
Yeah. I think as someone who's a competitive athlete and as a coach, it's I love everything that you've just said, firstly. I know as a coach, one of the things that I say to my clients in the beginning is I want them to track how they feel during their workouts through their cycle. So I want them to start to have that self-awareness that if at a certain point in their cycle, that's when they're not feeling their strongest. They'll see that trend over time. And so rather than I'm failing because I can't lift this weight on this day, this is just my cycle, and at this time of the month, this is how I will feel. And giving yourself that space, and it's okay and it's safe, and all of those positive things, rather than it being I'm failing because I'm a woman. And in the same way, I want them to have that awareness of themselves so that then they can make their choices. Okay, I know at this time of the month I'm going to start craving chocolate. Then why am I making that decision? And if you have the awareness of self, of why you're making that decision, then if you want to have the chocolate, fine. And if you want to stop and go, okay, what am I missing in my diet right now that I'm needing, then maybe you take another supplement or you're eating some different food. But you're going to adapt based on that self-awareness rather than have an instant response without any awareness and then punish yourself for that.
That's so powerful when you say at this time of my cycle, because then it's not a failure. You know, it's like, because when you don't frame it that way, they're going to say, oh, it's because I'm weak and I'm the only one craving chocolate. And it's not, there's no reason to them. And they think, oh, every day I'm going to crave chocolate or be weak in the gym or whatever. And then they want to give up. But when you say it's coming and they know that it's coming, it was like, oh, this is my time or whatever. You know, it's my time for my body to have the potential to create life. Like, we're amazing as women. And it was like, when you frame it with it's like, this is my time in the cycle. It was like, this is my body calling for rest, and you give it rest. It was like that empowers us and encourages us to live as women. Because what if we all didn't?
Exactly.
And we were trying to live like men? It would be terrible.
It would be terrible. I also, you mentioned ketosis, and this is something that I obviously know people who are raving ketogenic fans, and obviously, in my opinion, that's obviously not medical opinion, like for women it just doesn't work, because there are certain times in our cycle that we need more carbohydrates. And that's been something that I find I'm having to raise quite often these days. What's your opinion?
I'm never the one to ask about anything that's extreme, because I feel like you've missed the point. And every time that you do something that's excessive or extreme, and peeing on a stick and counting, like all this, I was like, this is not why we're on this planet. So not a good person to ask for those questions, but I feel like you've done your body a huge disservice when you do things in that nature. And for me, going through medical school, the ketogenic diet was for people with epilepsy, and it's so great that we've also found applications in cancer. But if you imagine it was like, okay, this is a treatment for cancer, then it would be like, okay, well, so is chemo for some people. It's like, do you do chemo forever? No. I was like, and likewise with this ketogenic diet, which is very extreme, like, do you do this forever? It's like, no. It's like, so it's not forever. And if people want to use that as a way to start something, to make some changes, if that's their only way to let go of the bad boys in your diet, great. And again, it's like, for this time, we're going to eat this way to make this change until we are, and here's my goal. And I know when my goal has come, and I know when to celebrate it. And on these particular days, if I'm feeling really poorly, it's like, then we're going to break that ketosis and we're going to do something different. And this is the honoring of our female cycles, because I've never ever worked with a female who only had to compete. They are still raising babies or running businesses or all these things that we have these expectations of the women these days. It was like, this is not, no, now you've added to the stress column, and it's not the relief column anymore. So I'm not about doing it. Certainly not the way a man would do it. And if you wanted to do it in a cycling female, it was like, pay attention to those days in the cycle, and then change the diet on the days usually around ovulation. So
I have played with doing that. I did that for like 6 months, where I did a more ketogenic phase, and then I upped the carbs for the other half of the cycle, and I found that very effective personally. But I always recommend, when I'm working with someone, like, you have to try the things yourself and pay attention to how, like, are you recovering? Are you sleeping? Are you craving things? I think it always comes back to self-awareness, but
yes, everything, always.
So I'd just like to ask you one more question before we have just passed an hour already, and I think we could talk for an hour forever. So I'd like to ask you if there's like one thing that you're incredibly interested in at the moment. To talk on that for a few minutes.
Gosh, yes. Yes, so what I am interested in the moment is not, probably not because I want to be interested, only because the way what we're doing with our environment and everything, and that is finding a way to take this very detailed approach that so many people are into, which makes me crazy, and address this sort of toxicity that we have from our environment, because there aren't agencies that care really about us, our health. They care about money and other things like that. Take that, clean out our mitochondria, our basic building blocks, is by manipulating that, by awareness of that. It's like we have a long way to go to take that science of medicine and allow that in for healing. But if we could do that, if we could harness that aspect of us, we could really be doing miracles every day. And that being said, it's like that very smallest part of our cell that generates our energy. I was like, this is the part that we need to covet and keep clean right now. And it's only because we're so poisoned that that's what brings me back to that. But guess those receptors on those bits, those little tiny bits that make up our whole, I was like, when we can work with those, when we understand how they communicate and how they receive communication, it was like it opens us up to so much more than we were ever thinking. Diet and supplements and everything. It was like, these are like we're using crayons, you know, these big, really sort of, they're not, I don't even know, they're not graceful, they're not like so specific. There are these massive tools that we're using. If we want some finesse and refinement, we can go, what really comes into those receptors, you know? And it's not just bits and pieces, it's whatever it is. It's that non-local information that comes in and can make huge changes. And that's what I think, if we could bring that into medicine, we really could do anything. Anything. Yeah, that's how powerful it is. So.
It's like, give me the sugar.
Okay.
So good clip.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, I thank you so much for being here, for spending your time with us. I cannot wait to have you at the summit this weekend.
Oh, good. It's going to be fun.
Yeah,
A girl power.
And I think, as all the panelists, you're all going to be like so inspired by each other. Like,
Oh, good.
No, it was faith that you were all the right people, and that it was going to happen the way it needed to. But now, like, having spent this time with you and spent time with Hala, who came in from Saudi yesterday. Obviously, I know Liz quite well. Having spent some of the time with you, like, I'm so excited for you all to be together. Like, I think it's going to be really powerful.
I think so. Every time women come together, it's
Yeah.
what we need. Yeah. So it's a supplement like anything else. And in our man's world, it was like, it's often something that we're denied, and that never would have happened historically.
Yeah.
The women always would have had time to come together, and we've really become more powerful when we do things together. So for me, in my man's world, where I hardly ever see a female, this is so exciting to me, because I was like, we all have batteries that need to be regenerated, and I think just by having this forum just with women, I was like, this is going to be fabulous for myself. I can leapfrog into another level, which we all need to do. So,
Thank you.
thanks for doing
Thank you
this.
so much.
Yeah.
So, thank you for joining us on the project, on the Generation Strong talk show. Ray's behind going, oh, she's got it wrong again.
Well, here we go.
Okay, thank you for joining us on the Generation Strong talk show. Stay hungry, stay strong, what is it?
Thank you for joining us on Generation Strong.
So thanks for joining us on the Generation Strong talk show. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast, follow us, subscribe, share, all of those things. Stay strong, stay hungry.
We're leaving that in
Close
there.
it off.
Yeah, we're leaving that in
Yeah,
there.
we're leaving all the